No spin, no bias, no censorship. I'm Dan Wootton. This is Outspoken as the UK is on the brink of a civil war. That is the shock warning today from Donald Trump's most loyal and longtime political ally, Steve Bannon, as Tucker Carlson says the whole point of slippery Starmer's Labour government is to degrade and humiliate the white population of England.
Well, the whole point is to humiliate and degrade the indigenous population of the British Isles, the white population. I mean, that's the whole point. And are they really going to do something about it? What would that be exactly? You'd really have to force a lot of people to go back to their countries of origin, millions of people, and you need to do it really soon.
I think England is heading towards a civil war.
Yet we're meant to trust this anti-white racist and hard-left Islamist extremist Shabana Mahmood to protect our borders.
The people that you see holding the English flag most of the time, down my neck of the woods, will be the EDL, and they are white and they are male.
I know that the British public expects us to bring order and control back to our immigration system. And as Home Secretary, I will do whatever it takes.
So I'll reveal why the chilling warning from the US will be ignored as the Labour left seizes control of our socialist government in my digest next. Then my superstar panel are here. Father Calvin Robinson and Restore Britain campaign's director Charlie Downs. Also coming up on the show today, a Talk TV host is ambushed live on air over the station's ban of Ben Habib as the war of words between the Advanced UK leader and the channel's host Julia Hartley-Brewer and Alex Phillips grows. Peter Mandelson's sick defence over his close relationship with Jeffrey Epstein hinges on the fact he's gay. Well, I think that's disgusting, and I'm going to have a lot to say about it. And the crooked MSM try to force Tom Skinner off Strictly Come Dancing simply for being right-wing, as the British bashing corporation is mired in a host of new scandals. Then, in the uncancelled after show on Substack, Prince Harry's £1.1 million charity donation is not what it seems. We'll reveal the truth about his flop Nottingham visit, which was designed to go head-to-head with Prince William as Meghan Markle finally attempts to back her husband. Or is she really? All the royal latest with YouTube sensation P. Diner. Of course, we'll also be revealing our greatest Britain and Union jackass by the end of the show. You get to choose the worst Britain in the world today. The nominations are live in the live chat on YouTube. Here they are, though. Peter Mandelson, nominated by Sarah Booth, who says, Lord Mandel Slime for slithering his way into another big scandal. Not content with resigning twice from government, he was given the US ambassador role and is squirming under his deep links with Epstein. Is he going for the hat trick? Jeremy Corbyn, nominated by It's Only Me 44 for standing on the picket line with the Trube drivers, and Emily Thornberry, nominated by Darren Donaldson, who describes her as Ladi Nuga Baroness Bunter for announcing her interest or obsession to be the new deputy leader of Labour and not allowing comments. They're now open and it's brutal. All the glory and kudos and expenses, but might actually have to be close to real working class folk. And we know she doesn't like that because Emily Thornberry is just completely allergic to our English flag. So 3 great choices. Get voting. Let me know your comments throughout the show. I'll read them before we go today. So do stick with us. But now, let's go. The UK now has an anti-white racist and hard-left Islamist extremist in Shabana Mahmood as Home Secretary. The hard left is seizing control of slippery Starmer's government with a plot to introduce digital ID and make so-called Islamophobia illegal. Yet our corrupt regime media are trying to pretend it's business as usual, even as Steve Bannon warns of a new English civil war being unavoidable, and Tucker Carlson brings to the world's attention the plot to degrade and humiliate the white population of the United Kingdom. But it really does leave me thinking, why are Americans having the conversations about the destruction of Britain that our MSM are too gutless and weak to have? Well, not in the independent space, not here on Outspoken, which is why Tommy Robinson's Uniting the Kingdom rally on Saturday is going to be such a dramatic uprising, as the leader of the cultural movement says Peter Lynch was murdered behind bars.
Look at Keir Starmer. Look at what they're doing. Look at what he's done. Do you know what? And when I say this, people ain't going to like it or hearing it. It had to happen. We needed Keir Starmer. We needed to see the weaponisation of the judiciary. We needed to see the oppression of the working class. We needed to see the attack on British people who dared to voice their concerns. We needed to see Lucy Connolly imprisoned. I had to be imprisoned in the way I was for that film, for the public to see it. Unfortunately, Peter Lynch was murdered in prison. He's dead. Yeah. All of these things, unfortunately, and in fact, people may not want to hear it. These are all things that had to happen in order to bring the public to the position they're now in.
Meanwhile, even the BBC reports there is now a total revolt within our governing party, which, trust me, is going to see the country move even further to the hard left.
Internal rows are no good. What is the mood as the internal rows continue?
Well, Paddy, I would have to say the mood in Parliament today amongst Labour MPs was absolutely funereal. I had loyalists coming up to me saying it's now when, not if, Keir Starmer goes. They're saying he can't connect. A lot of people wondering whether he can last through the summer of 2026. And a lot of resentment over the way the reshuffle was carried out.
But when a guest on Sly News tried to explain and describe the Labour hard left as what they really are, look at what happened.
May submit their names. There was only one sort of, I think you could say, far left candidate. Is there such a thing as far left in the Labour Party anymore? But Bel Ribeiro, Addy. Of the left of the Labour Party. Of the left of the Labour Party, yes. So...
Unbelievable. But what I find most shameful, that the red alarm button about what the UK is now facing outside of independent channels like this one is being pressed by Americans who watch with horror as they think about the fact that they may have suffered the same fate if Kamala Harris had defeated Donald Trump. Tucker Carlson has now warned Piers Morgan that our white population is being purposefully humiliated as part of a planned wipeout.
You humiliate and degrade the indigenous population of the British Isles, the white population. I mean, that's the whole point. And are they really going to do something about it? What would that be exactly? You'd really have to force a lot of people to go back to their countries of origin, millions of people, and you need to do it really soon. And are they actually willing to do that? I don't know, but these are existential questions that we have been browbeat into ignoring for decades. But the question is, like, is Ireland Ireland? If it's majority non-Irish? Oh, shut up, they're Irish. No, they're actually not Irish. Same with the UK, same with England, Scotland, Wales. Like, it's all changing so fast. Nothing like this has ever happened in all of history, except when, say, the Mongols swept across the steppe and raped everybody. Like, that was true demographic change on this scale.
And so few people are prepared to talk like that here, but we need to. So kudos to Nick Dixon, who wrote, white people are not just the least racist, they're the only group that's ever even attempted not being racist. Unfortunately, no one else joined in. So now we're just being slaughtered, literally and figuratively. And of course, this is backed by almost every Western government. And Tucker Carlson is convinced that that is part of a wider plan.
But even that wasn't as profound as what we're seeing in every white country around the world. I would say the West, but Australia and New Zealand also. So, like, what is that? Now, my brain is not big enough to understand what that is. I have a lot of theories about it, but I don't know if they're true. All I know is what the numbers are. And that's real. And no one feels that he can say it. Everyone's like, oh, well, if that were happening in China or India or Malaysia or Senegal, it doesn't matter. You'd be like, what the hell is that? Like, the population's totally different. Look at graduation. Pick, I don't know, King's College Law School. And look at the graduation picture for the last 30 years. Who's in it? Just, like, let your eyes tell you the truth for once. Like, this is a total change in population. Is it better? Is it worse? Can't have that conversation. Who's pushing this? Does the population want it? The population clearly doesn't want it. There's no polling that's meaningful on the subject. I mean, there's no referendum on it. You don't get to decide. You've got no voice in it, other than you get to go to jail if you complain loudly enough about it. What is this? I think it's the biggest and darkest thing that has happened in the last 1,000 years, for sure. And I think it's leading somewhere really, really bad. It's not happening by accident. That's obvious because it's only happening in white countries.
I mean, I think that...
Oh, shut up, white supremacist. Well, in fact, I'm not a white supremacist.
Well,
I'm just noticing what the hell's going on.
You can just see Piers Morgan's head exploding in real time there, can't you? But Tucker is right. And he's not the only one raising the alarm. Donald Trump's most loyal and longtime political ally, Steve Bannon, now says England is facing imminent civil war, and even Nigel Farage and Reform UK may not be able to stop it.
There's some deep undercurrents right now. This raising this spontaneous populist move of putting up the English flag, right? The cross of St. George, and putting up the Union Jack, and then have them taken down by authorities. There's something there. I think you guys, unless there's a big course correction, I think England is heading towards a civil war, unless there's a big course correction. And I'm not even sure, as highly as I think of Nigel Farage and what he's done with the Reform Party, I'm not so sure that the cavalry can arrive soon enough to avoid some quite unpleasantness in England.
And it's not a surprise, is it, when you look at the statistics? As Matt Goodwin pointed out, in each of the past 3 years, more people migrated to Britain than to America, a country that is 40 times larger by area than the UK and has almost 5 times the population. And even though Bannon is clearly to the right of Farage, he is heartened by the shifting Overton window in Britain when it comes to mass deportations.
Nigel's definitely come our way, as I think other people are coming our way in France and Germany. People are coming to the conclusion, and eventually in Italy. You have these populations that got here through all these different means, and they're not assimilating, and also it's a massive financial burden. It just can't stay. Plus, it's such a detriment to your own population. So mass deportations, when we first brought this up, and President Trump started talking about it, we were considered the most radical people in the world. Remember, we were bringing it up at a time, or even before, but when they allowed 10 to 20 million people, think about that, 10 to 20 million people into the United States when we were talking about mass deportation. So no, it's, I think the world's coming our way because the world's seeing the problems. And I think Nigel is coming to the realization that more dramatic, this is what I was saying, it was a perfect example of, if you listen to the content of Nigel's talks, even if you see the timbre of his voice, he's giving warnings to people. I just hope people understand that Nigel Farage, who's pretty much a man of the center right, is actually warning you that something has to happen here, and it has to happen pretty dramatically. And the institutions of England are not even, forget going there, they're not even stopping the problem right now.
Honestly, we need to be listening to Steve Bannon. I need you to listen to Steve Bannon, who says that the risk of constantly ignoring the people, which is absolutely what has happened in the United Kingdom over the past 60 years when it comes to immigration, is actually putting democracy itself in peril.
Now, you're warning that if things don't change in Britain and other places, democracy will not be enough. The democratic ballot will not be enough. What do you mean by that? What kind of revolution are we talking about?
I think people, if they see elections that don't have impact, thank God here, this is why the come from behind, out of nowhere victory of Trump in 24 and kind of sweeping everywhere is really has given us the leverage to try to do these types of things. And people, the MAGA movement, and even the black men, the African-American men, the black men, and the Hispanics that voted for us are seeing that we're taking action, particularly securing the border. Think about it. A year ago this time, Biden's telling you the border can't be sealed. It's impossible. You can't do it. We've tried everything. Trump did it in 60 days. So it's people are seeing the impact of where elections have consequences, and those consequences are what I voted for. I think in England it's the exact opposite. I think they're actually questioning, because your institutions are so powerful in England, right? The non-directly political institutions are so powerful. They're not changing at all, in particular your media. In fact, you're going the opposite direction on this.
And he is so right, because our raging media is silent, even on our free speech being smashed, which the White House has just revealed was raised by President Trump in those talks with Slippery Starmer at Turnberry in July. They're also ignoring the truth about how dangerous our new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who clearly hates our flag and the native population, really is. Watch.
You know, the people that you see holding the English flag most of the time, down my neck of the woods, will be the EDL, and they are white and they are male and they're bad people and they want to divide our community.
As Nadine Dorries, the new Reform UK recruit, put it, the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom openly sneering at the English flag. If you are proud of your country, if you dare to fly St. George, you are branded a bad person. Labour hates patriotism. Yet we are still being asked to believe that Shabana Mahmood is the woman to protect our homeland.
Just days ago, I was appointed Home Secretary with one clear priority: tackling illegal migration. The government has already laid the foundations. We have lifted removals to 35,000 people and struck a historic agreement with France. But the challenge that we face is considerable and we must go further. That's why I have hosted our Five Eyes allies: America, Australia, Canada and New Zealand. We have discussed the shared challenges that we face from enemies who have no respect for our borders. And we have agreed coordinated action to enforce security and protect our citizens, including tougher sanctions on countries who refuse to take back their own citizens who are living here unlawfully. I know that the British public expects us to bring order and control back to our immigration system. And as Home Secretary, I will do whatever it takes to secure our...
But as one of her predecessors, Suella Braverman, argued, we've heard that one before, and it didn't end very well.
Just days ago, I was appointed Home Secretary.
But the deranged left in this country are in a parallel universe. Liberal Democrats are actually suggesting the public service broadcaster should ignore Nigel Farage and Reform UK, despite being the most popular party in the country. As ever, their answer is more censorship and more cancellations. As my friend Colin Brazier put it, the vast majority of Reform voters long ago abandoned the BBC in disgust at the corporation's inability to hide its spite for Nigel Farage. This outrage would be less faux if you could walk into a BBC newsroom and find it full of Reform voters rather than Lib Dem supporters. But yet still, the smears come, they never learn, with John McDonnell, Labour's former Shadow Chancellor, now comparing Nigel Farage to Hitler and describing Reform as a proto-fascist organisation. But here's the reality. And you've got to really tap in to Tucker Carlson and Steve Bannon here. Those smears don't work anymore. We know the real extremists are the hard left who right now up and down this country are trying to pull down our beautiful flags.
If you're getting rid of those, I'll have them. We're getting rid of them. Why? It's racist. Like it. It's not racist. Yeah, it is. Oh, I don't think it is. Yeah, just supporting the message that people should be allowed in the country. No, I don't think people. No, I don't think people actually mean like that, to be fair.
Not letting people in here saying that people can be subject to what goes on in their country.
From what I've seen, I don't think that's what people mean. I think people are just getting...
People need to educate themselves then. You need to go read about it. I'm doing this because I really care about it.
Yeah, people do care, but you've got to see it. You've got to see it from everybody's point of view. You've got to see it from everybody's point of view, not just one person. But what I will say is people online...
I don't want to see these, so I'm going to do something about it. It's okay if
you
disagree.
And we know that the real lawlessness on the streets is ignored by the police every single day if you happen to be someone who isn't on the hard left. Like an ice cream attack in London on the pro-women's rights American activist Billboard Chris, who said the Met Police refused to do anything. As he said, to sum up, just another day telling the truth in a world gone mad. Watch what happened to him.
Palestinians aren't really into trans, are they? Are they? Do you agree?
Well, the Palestinians will throw them off the rooftops if they identify as trans. Yeah, she's not engaging.
Oh, well done, mate. That was a fault.
Police! Hey, police! Assault! I was just assaulted. Excuse me. I was just assaulted. I'd like this person arrested. The person slammed ice cream on my head. We have it on video. Are you going to do anything?
Do you know who it is?
No, but it's on video. I'd like the person arrested before they walk away.
Yeah, unfortunately, we can't identify them in the middle
Unfortunately, you can't do anything right now. I have the video right here. You can look at it in 3 seconds.
Provide your details to me.
Would you like to look at the video and then go get the person?
Are you happy to provide your details or not?
Yes.
Okay.
But the person's walking away.
Pardon?
You don't have much time. The person's walking away.
There's not a lot I can do at the moment, is there, when there's a big crowd of people?
You can look at the video in 3 seconds and go get them. Yeah, you're just going to do nothing about it. You're going to do nothing until they're gone. Typical Metropolitan Police, doing nothing about the violent crime.
Welcome to Shabana Mahmood's United Kingdom. Now, the Superstar Panel. Restore Britain's Charlie Downs. Back with me. Father Calvin, Steve Bannon says it might even be too late for Reform UK and Nigel Farage to stop a new English civil war. Is that hyperbole or a real fear?
No, it's a very real fear. I've been saying this for a while. I think this is going to end in one of very few ways. One of them is civil unrest. The other is civil war. It depends how much righteous indignation the British people have within them to fight back against the suppression from the establishment, from the metropolitan liberal elite, from the ones who are oppressing the ethnic Britons of our country. Steve Bannon is absolutely right. But in the question of can reform turn things around, who knows? You know, I'm very skeptical about Reform and Nigel Farage in particular. I'm trying to speak less on them because it's just tiresome at the moment, but it's not even about them. I think Farage is just another puppet. I've been tweeting this week about it's no coincidence that Sir Paul Marshall is the one who is backing Nigel Farage, and it's no coincidence that Sir Paul Marshall is the major backer of GB News. No coincidence that Nigel Farage's competitors are not invited onto GB News. Also, no coincidence that GB News has invested massive amounts of money in the US, even though they're wasting money in the UK and it's not even a viable business, expanding to the US so they can get endorsements for Nigel Farage from the US administration. So all of this is lining up to see that there's one billionaire in Great Britain that's looking to be the puppet master of the centre-right of the UK. That should be people's major concerns. People have talked about people like Rupert Murdoch for a long time. We don't like when multi-millionaires or billionaires come into the UK and try to manipulate us through the legacy media. And so we should be keeping a close eye on what GB News, Unheard, Spectator, all assets of Sir Paul Marshall, and, you know, of course, he tried to buy the Telegraph too. We should keep a close eye on what these outlets are saying, who they're promoting and who they're not promoting.
Very good point, and I totally agree with that, and we will come to that. Charlie Downs, civil war, and even Steve Bannon says the risk that democracy itself could end up being smashed if the people are consistently ignored.
Well, my view of this, Dan, is that basically if we don't get a patriotic government in 2029, then political solutions, democratic solutions are going to look less and less viable, if for no other reason than the demographic reality of the country will be such that the non-British voting bloc will be so large that we may be staring down the barrel of something like an Islamist government entering power in 2034 or 2039. I mean, if you look at the projections of the demographics of certain parts of this country and the places in which Gaza independent candidates came second to, for example, the Labour Party in the general election last year, it's a very widespread phenomenon, and it's only going to get more intense and worse as time goes on, because mass immigration, legal and illegal, is still ongoing. These people who come from other parts of the world who are not ethnically British tend to reproduce at a higher rate than indigenous British people do. So we're looking at a situation. I mean, Matt Goodwin put out a paper recently where he said in 2067, I believe, the white British will be a minority in this country. But it will be long before then that democratic means of resolving our plight as a nation become unviable. So that's why I think it's so important that the right, the political right in Britain, get its act together. Because I look across the landscape right now, Dan, I look at the Conservative Party and Reform, And I don't see in either of those a viable party of government. I don't see a prime minister, certainly not in Kemi Badenoch. And I think Nigel Farage, he's choosing to spend his time and resources on glitz and glamour, where actually the country is crying out for substance and for leadership, not kind of slot populism.
Well, it was
which I think looking at the Reform Conference, that was largely what it was.
Well, it was interesting hearing Steve Bannon in other parts of Stephen Edgington's interview effectively say Farage is on the centre right. And even though he's friends with Farage, the clear read between the lines, my takeaway from that interview is that Bannon thinks Farage is going in the right direction, but he's certainly not anywhere near close to where he needs to be. But Father Calvin, I want to come to the Tucker Carlson comments because I was very struck by one of your posts on X this afternoon. So let me just read it and then I can get you to go into a bit more detail because this is very similar to what Tucker was saying. You say something has to be done about anti-white racism. It is systemic. Liberals in politics and legacy media seem to hate white girls in particular, from covering up Pakistani Muslim rape gangs in Britain to the awful response to Aaron Azaritska's murder in Charlotte, which has stunned and horrified the world. And Tucker Carlson went even one step further, Father Calvin, by suggesting this is now a plot by our globalist leaders to humiliate the native white population of the UK. What did you make of that?
I think his words were very strong. I can't speak to a plot, but we can certainly see a lot of coincidences happening. What are the two major issues in Great Britain right now? Well, the Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs is one of them. The mass migration certainly is a cause of that issue. And the other is the two-tier policing, in that white Britons are being arrested for saying ordinary things, whereas other people are not. In fact, some of the grooming gang perpetrators are being let out early while people are being arrested for calling them out on social media. And so what does the government do? Well, it puts a Pakistani Muslim in the Home Office responsible for immigration and policing. So whilst immigration and policing are two of our major concerns, an enemy of both of those things is put into the office responsible for them. They are mocking us. It's no longer just, these can't be coincidences. Something else is going on. I can't, like Tucker Carlson, I can't speak to who or what, but we can certainly see there is a movement against the British people, against the English people. White people are being oppressed, being persecuted in a predominantly white country. That is not a good thing.
Charlie Downs, do you want to come in on that?
I think this is so crucial because it is an interesting thing that if you were to reveal or discover the fact that the demographic upheaval that Britain has undergone was in fact by design, and that it was in fact the intention of our leaders to demographically replace and transform areas of this country, like for example in London, in places like Dagenham, for instance, that have like sub 30% white British people living there now, where it was 95+% like 30 years ago. If that was by design, that is an ethnic cleansing. That is essentially tantamount to genocide. I mean, it's certainly on the path to it. And I think if you look across the rest of the culture and you look at what the entertainment industry promotes, if you look at what the education system promotes, if you wanted to destroy a people, if you wanted to destroy a nation, what would you do? Well, you would make abortion and assisted suicide readily accessible. You would flood the market with pornography and entertainment products that incentivize lifestyles that are degenerate and destructive and which do not yield positive outcomes for the people and the people around them. You would flood the country with people from cultures very different to our own, who are frequently more violent, more criminal than those who live here already. And you would cripple their economy and their energy infrastructure by implementing these nonsensical policies like net zero, for example, and also by printing inordinate sums of money over the last few years. All of these things, if there is intention behind them, then what we're looking at is essentially a genocidal force at play. Now, I'm not saying that that is the case. I don't think that there's enough evidence to suggest that this is all by design with the express purpose of wiping out the indigenous British population. But the revealed purpose of this system does appear to be that, right? And so we have to be real about what it is we're dealing with, because platitudes of British values and kind of 2015 Tory Cameronite talking points about integration and assimilation. We are well past that at this point. And I've been speaking this week about how we have to free ourselves of these myths, these political myths that have prevented the British people from actually doing anything about their situation. These fears that we have about the labels that we're going to be called, and these, the ideologies that we're sold as remedies to this situation. All of it is nonsense, and all of it is designed, I think, to contain the radical dissident energy that is sweeping across this country. I think that that's manifesting itself in reform, but it's also manifesting itself in the support for Tommy Robinson, of course, as well as the flag, Raise the Colours campaign. There is this nascent, authentically patriotic, essentially nationalist movement that is brewing in this country that I think doesn't currently have a name or a leader, but which is certainly
But it's coming.
And
Totally
until these
agree.
problems are addressed, it's going to get bigger.
It's coming. And I think we may see the start of it at the Uniting the Kingdom rally on Saturday. Father Calvin, I've got to ask you about Shabana Mahmood, though, because we're told she's the solution. The MSM are actually trying to pretend this is some hardliner who wants to protect our borders. Have they not listened to everything that this woman has told us? That the guiding principles of her life are completely driven by her Islamic faith.
It's funny, isn't it, seeing that video of her and Sadiq Khan in Pakistan showing their true loyalties to Pakistan over Great Britain and the two of the most powerful people in the United Kingdom right now. It's a great shame that we repealed the Test Act, which meant that everyone that wanted to stand for office in Great Britain had to be a member of the Church of England. It made sense to... Because as Charlie was just talking about, we don't have British values, we have Christian values. This has all been a Tony Blair and David Cameron gaslighting appeal to say, oh, tolerance of others and respect of the law are our values. No, they're not our values. Don't gaslight us into being good, subservient subjects of the establishment, for goodness sake. British values, English values have always been Christian values since 927, since Rex Anglorum, since the country of England was founded, uniting the different regions together under Christ. And so unless we refine our faith, unless we return to church, unless we return to prayer, we'll continue to see the implosion of the island of Great Britain, unfortunately. And yes, there are some political solutions. There are some things we need to do. And putting people like Shabnam in office, Mahmood, of course, another word for Mohammed. There should be no person with the name Mohammed in any office in England, because Mohammedan values are directly opposed to Christian values. It is a demonic lie opposed to an objective truth. And we used to understand these things. We used to understand the difference between good and evil. We used to understand that our culture is superior, that our values are superior. And that's not pride. That's us wanting to spread the truth, wanting to spread beauty, wanting to spread goodness. That's what the British Empire was all about, for goodness sake. And somehow we've been convinced to be guilty of all of these good things, to be guilty of our past, and to destroy ourselves in the process. This anti-Christian, anti-white, anti-English, anti-British sentiment that is very encapsulated in this Labour government, isn't, well, it's not just Labour, it's also the Conservatives, but it's just the epitome of where we've come. And we need to throw all that away, embrace good old-fashioned Christianity, and embrace the British Empire and all things that were good, and rebuild the empire.
Very well put. Very well put. By the way, we are just getting some breaking royal news. Prince Harry has just arrived at Clarence House for what is believed to be a face-to-face meeting with his father, King Charles. Cannot believe this. Unfortunately, we do have a weak monarch, and I understand why Prince William will be furious about this, but we will bring you details on that meeting and get reaction from the Superstar panel later in the show. The civil war in the right-wing media space is growing by the day, with Ben Habib accusing Julia Hartley-Brewer, Alex Phillips, and Talk TV of purposefully banning him after his Advance UK political party, or what is soon to be a political party, received significant backing from Elon Musk and Tommy Robinson. Viewers are furious about this and have even ambushed one of Talk's presenters live on air. But before I show you this, let me get to this exchange between Hartley-Brewer and Habib. Brewer wrote, "Stop being ridiculous, Ben Habib. No one is in anyone's pocket and no one has cancelled you. Get a grip." But Ben bought the receipts, writing, "Julia, you and I exchanged private texts and you know Talk banned me. I evidenced it to you. I suggest a degree of internal introspection before leaping onto the airwaves. And World by Wolf has a theory on this. He wrote, I know for a cast iron fact that journalists, and he's put journalists in inverted commas, at GB News and Talk TV, as well as mainstream print like The Telegraph and Spectator, are worried that criticising reform and giving airtime to their rivals like Ben and Rupert will lead to their access being cut and therefore risk their jobs. Farage is a big media draw. Getting interviews with him generated eyeballs, which generated ad revenue, which keeps you in a job. It's the prisoner's dilemma. Act with integrity and you will likely be screwed over, so your best bet becomes playing the game and keeping your access. Ben has created a political party that got to 30,000 members in record time, but none of the right-wing media report on it. Why? They're gambling that reform will prevail, and they'd rather have access to the king at the cost of their integrity than be watching from the sidelines with their integrity intact. But there's also been a lot of nastiness, and this is what I don't like, the arrogance from Reform UK. Ben Habib was your deputy leader through the darkest of times before all of the latecomers from the Tory party joined. So for Tim Montgomery to mock him in this way, posting on X, the lizards have ordered this ban on Ben. It's all part of a massive conspiracy against him, all coordinated by the same people who faked the moon landing, with Julia responding, shh. I think that's below them. And I think it proves that Reform doesn't actually want unity on the right. They want total supremacy. But what is great is that the people are angry, and the people decided to call out Talk Radio live on air during a conversation with my friend Ian Collins, who I saw earlier this week at James Whale's funeral. Very good guy. But I will respond to what Ian Collins said in just one moment. But first, watch the live ambush.
Yeah, I'd love to see that Starmer announcement.
Let's just have Ben Habib and Advance UK through, please.
Is that where your vote would go?
It is, and shame on Talk TV for not letting them on and penalising them.
Penalising them? We've had Ben and we had Rupert on last week. He was on the week before.
No, you've stopped having Ben Habib on. You have deliberately
we really haven't
having Ben Habib on.
We really haven't.
I think you find your heart. When was the last time you had Ben Habib on?
Probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe. I can't remember, but there's no. I can promise you, sitting here now, there's no, absolutely.
There is.
No, first of August, Ben was on with us.
No, there's a direct agenda against Advance UK, especially because of Tommy Robinson.
There really isn't.
TV.
There really isn't. And he would have been on other programmes since he's been on with me. And I promise you, sitting here, looking at a load of producers who are just checking this out for us in terms of the dates.
No, Ben Habib has not been on mainstream TV, and I class Talk TV as mainstream TV now.
I can't speak for wherever else he's been.
No, he hasn't been on Talk, he hasn't been on GB News, he hasn't been on any mainstream TV.
Well, I can't speak for anyone else. All I know is he was on with us about a month ago. And that would be around about the kind of amount of time we would have him on every few weeks. That would be normal, and he'll be on again. So I promise you, there's definitely no conspiracy there. Jerry, thank you, and I appreciate that if you are a supporter of a certain colour or a certain group or an individual, you want to hear them more. I understand that, but there's absolutely no 100%. What Jerry just said, I've never heard that theory before until.
And look, I really like Ian Collins, have a huge amount of respect for him as a broadcaster, but what he's saying is just nonsensical. When Elon Musk met Nigel Farage and Nick Candy at Mar-a-Lago earlier this year, without even making an official endorsement, without even donating any money, it was wall-to-wall, quite rightly, on all of the right-wing networks. For Talk and GB News to not even utter a word about the fact that Elon Musk is now officially endorsing Advance UK, that he's meeting with them, that potentially he's going to be giving money, is a dereliction of journalism, and it does prove that there is a ban. Brett Murphy on this wrote, it's abundantly clear Ben Habib has been cancelled by GB News and Talk TV, both of which are mouthpieces for reform. With Advance going past the 30,000 membership mark in a very short time, it's clear we are on the right track and the resistance comes from being right over target. Nick Simon said GB News might as well be called GB Farage. Totally and constantly promoting reform, blatant political bias. Where is Advance UK? Where is Ben Habib? Never invited on, never mentioned. Where is Rupert Lowe? Never invited on, never mentioned. To my superstar panel, both have fascinating views on this. Former talk radio and GB News star, Father Calvin Robinson, and Charlie Downs, who now works for Rupert Lowe's Restore Britain movement. So, Father Calvin, come on, let's just be honest about this. Of course, there is a ban. Of course, these two stations have decided to go all in with Reform UK and Nigel Farage. We even saw, and by the way, I'm not necessarily criticising this, but I'm just stating a fact, we even saw Jeremy Kyle co-present Reform UK's conference. We saw GB News presenters on stage. We know that GB News presenters are discussing behind the scenes becoming Reform UK candidates, the likes of Martin Daubney. That's fine. But I think we just need to be honest about it, because Ben Habib used to be one of the most popular people on both of those stations. You know that, Father Calvin. You know how much the audience adored him. He would appear constantly on some of the big shows like Michelle Dewberry. Now he's not even on when there's a major news story.
Funny that, isn't it? When I was at GB News, I was one of the first people to invite UKIP, the SDP, Reclaim, Reform, Heritage, invited them all onto a show together. My idea was, let's get the right to unite. Proved very difficult, trying to bang their heads together. But that was the object of the show that I was hosting. Try and find that show online. All my other shows are online, so it's not about me being fired. Try and find that one. It's not there. It's interesting. There's certainly a block list or a blacklist or a ban list at GB News. As a presenter, I was never allowed to see it, but the producers would tell me, you can't have Carl Benjamin on. You can't have Tommy Robinson on. You can't have Katie Hopkins on. Even once I got permission from the CEO to have Katie Hopkins on, and my producers still barred me from doing it. And so there is definitely a list of people that aren't allowed on, and I think Ben Habib has been put on that list. And it seems to me that actually what's going on is there's an orchestrated movement here. Again, I referred to this at the beginning of the show, but there is a puppet master in the UK, one very rich knight of the realm who sees himself as the Machiavellian king behind the scenes or kingmaker. And it should worry everyone that when someone is the major funder of GB News, Unheard, The Spectator, and attempted to purchase The Telegraph, therefore would have held a monopoly over the centre-right in British politics, when that same person is heavily investing money into GB News, which is sinking money down the drain. Again, it's not a viable business. They're not making any money. And then at the same time is investing money in the US to launch GB News out there. And the same week that happens, we have US politicians from the US regime, from the administration, backing Nigel Farage, who just happens to be the figurehead of GB News. It seems to be an about way of putting money into supporting Nigel Farage to becoming the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Therefore, Sir Paul Marshall will have heavy influence over the next United Kingdom's Prime Minister. This is what it all seems to be about. I can't speak to Talk Radio and the reason that they haven't had him on, but I can certainly speak to the fact that GB News do have a ban list. I know that from first-hand experience, and I know that they will take down conversations that they don't want to be seen about uniting the right. They have a heavy influence on reform, and that is what they want. It's all about political influence and power. It's not about representing alternative views. It's not about free speech. It's none of that. They are gaslighting the population into believing that they represent the people when they do not represent the people. They represent the interests of a very rich knight of the realm.
Very good point. And I think you're completely right, Father Calvin. Not enough is known about those slippery tentacles of Paul Marshall, and the fact that actually he's not a true conservative. He's a Liberal Democrat. And yes, he was a Brexiteer. So good on him for that. But politically, he is very liberal. He's a Liberal Democrat. Remember, his pick for The Spectator, Michael Gove, is, I believe, a left-winger. And his first move as the new editor of The Spectator was to endorse Kamala Harris to become US president. So we just have to be thinking about that.
He is a millionaire, but multimillionaire. But where did he make his money? George Soros gave him his first $50 million. That should raise heckles for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Charlie Downs, interested in your perspective on this, because Rupert Lowe who is now the boss of your organisation, Restore Britain, also used to be a favourite on GB News. I mean, I have been seeing him popping up on Talk TV, and I think that's great. But he's certainly not on GB News anymore from what I've seen. And again, he was one of the most popular people with the viewers. And by the way, to suggest he's not a force on the right of British politics is completely delusional. He now comes up in the odds for who's going to be the next Prime Minister of this country. And it was revealed this week that he makes more money from X than any other MP, including Nigel Farage.
Yeah, that's what pays my salary, Dan. Anyway, look, I don't know. I'm certain that every broadcaster probably has a blacklist. And there was a period where my phone went a little bit quiet, and it was in the aftermath of us launching Restore Britain. I couldn't help but wonder whether my association with Rupert had perhaps set off alarms in the broadcasters in the mainstream kind of centre right. But that is no longer the case. I go on GB News and Talk TV regularly, and I'm permitted to say things on both stations which are, in my view, very radical. It seems to me that there's not a huge number of people who say things that I do. I mean, I talk about concepts such as remigration, net negative immigration, mass deportations, which are increasingly becoming mainstream positions, but which, even 6 months ago would have been fairly controversial to say, even on these platforms. Now, as far as Ben Habib is concerned, I respect Ben hugely, as I've said on your show before, Dan. I can't help but wonder, to play devil's advocate to you both, whether the perspective of people at these stations is, I don't know. Look, Nigel Farage is, a friend of mine said Nigel Farage is in the script, right? And I think that that's quite an interesting way of looking at it. Because if you look at all of the mouthpieces of power, sure, there's a lot of resistance to Nigel Farage from those who are explicitly left-wing. But it does seem to me that within the journalistic class and within the media, there has been an implicit kind of understanding that, look, it's looking like Farage is going to be the next Prime Minister, right? And so I think you're right to say, Calvin, that Dan, that they don't want to lose access, right? Because you know as well as I do that if you dare to criticise Reform UK, they will blacklist you, right?
100%. They are the most thin-skinned party, and they would much, much rather sit down with a journalist on the left than one on the right, which is very, very interesting. But at the end of the day, I think we have to be honest about the fact now that GB News and Talk TV are certainly different organisations to the ones that I worked for, when the whole point was to be independent of any party, to shift the Overton window, to shift the discussion in this country to the right. That is no longer what they're doing. They're trying to get Nigel Farage elected as Prime Minister. In some ways, I'm totally fine with that, but I just want them to be honest about it. And trying to say that there's not a ban on Ben Habib, but he used to be your most popular guest, is completely ludicrous. Shocking new details have just emerged about Peter Mandelson and Jeffrey Epstein. And there is absolutely no way that one of the most morally bankrupt men in the world should be continuing as our ambassador in the United States. But to me, actually, this is the story that should bring down Keir Starmer, and I truly do mean that, Slippery Starmer, because he hired this man to be our representative in the US, knowing full well about the links to Epstein, a convicted paedophile. And just to stress, his links to Epstein, because I know what the left are going to say, what about Donald Trump? No. This is a totally different situation. Mandelson's links to Epstein continued long after he was a convicted paedophile. The man is a snake. He brings shame to Britain. And actually, he brings shame to me as a gay man by trying to use that as his defense today. But first, I've got to get to this breaking news because The Sun has just revealed leaked emails between Jeffrey Epstein and Peter Mandelson that show Mandelson was actually coaching Epstein even after he had been accused of soliciting a minor. Here's some of what Lord Mandelson wrote. Your friends stay with you and love you. He argued that he should be fighting for an early release after he was sentenced to 18 months in jail after a plea deal. And he said, this is after the conviction, by the way, I think the world of you, and I feel hopeless and furious about what has happened. I can still barely understand it. It just could not happen in Britain. You have to be incredibly resilient, fight for early release, and be philosophical about it as much as you can. What, Mandelson? Be philosophical about being a pedo? You're a sicko, mate. And you should be finished. Sorry, this is just disgraceful. This was in their private email addresses, by the way. And you're going to be even more angry when you hear what he said next. Mandelson wrote to Epstein, everything can be turned into an opportunity. And you will come through it and be stronger for it. The whole thing has been years of torture, and now you have to show the world how big a person you are and how strong. In a separate email, he offered strategic advice to one of the world's most prolific paedophiles, writing, reminder, you are fighting back, so you need strategy, strategy, strategy. Remember the art of war. So let's just think about this at the moment. Mandelson, who has not denied the veracity of these emails, believes that Jeffrey Epstein being a convicted paedophile was an opportunity for a career comeback. And people say that Candace Owens is off her rocker when she talks about a network of paedophiles running the world. I'm sorry, there's evidence of it. Starmer knew. He knew all of this, and he still gave him the job. We have sickos in charge of our country. Now, Mandelson is fighting back in a softball interview in the Murdoch media, where he admits he is embarrassed with his 10-page love letter to Epstein. Watch.
You've been in the news of late. This 10-page birthday letter you wrote Jeffrey Epstein, admittedly, 5 years before his first conviction. It makes a
over 20 years ago.
5 years before he was convicted. It makes a pretty cringeworthy reading. I have two questions on that, really. How does it feel to see those words blasted across the world? And how do you think it feels to those people who are fighting Epstein for justice?
I find them very embarrassing to see and to read. But as you say, they were written before he was indicted. But I just feel two things now. One, I feel a tremendous sense, a profound sense of sympathy for those people, those women who suffered as a result of his behaviour and his illegal criminal activities. And secondly, I regret very, very deeply indeed carrying on that association with him for far longer than I should have done.
How long was it?
Oh, it was a matter of years after I initially met him.
No, it was years after he was a convicted paedophile, you sicko. And those softball questions from Harry Cole, I mean, it makes me feel like a deal's been done there too. Anyway, then he denied business links. Watch.
And I regret very much that I fell for his lies. I fell and accepted assurances that he had given me about his indictment, his original criminal case in Florida. Like very many people, I took at face value what he said. With hindsight, with fresh information, many years later, we realized that we had been wrong to believe him. He's a charismatic criminal liar, we now see. And I regret very much indeed, I felt it like an albatross around my neck since his death in 2018 or 19 when it was. I feel a tremendous sense of regret, not only that I met him in the first place, but that I continued the association and I took at face value the lies that he fed me and many others.
So after he was first convicted, first indicted, you continued a business and personal friendship
relationship? It was
not a business relationship. You didn't do any business together, even informally, introducing to people, doing people, scratching backs, as you put it earlier. Nothing.
He never. He operated in a financial and business way, way above my level. Yes, he was always saying, "Would you like to see so and so? I've got this friend. I'm having this dinner. Would you like to come?" He was a prolific social networker. and a political network.
Yes, so you had a business relationship. But then it gets worse, and this infuriates me. Mandelson then uses the fact he's a gay man as an excuse for ignoring the very obvious paedophilia that was going on.
I just would say this to you, Harry. During all the time I was an associate of his, I never saw the wrongdoing. I never saw any evidence of criminal activity. I never sought, and nor did he offer any introductions to women in the way that allegedly he did for others. Perhaps it's because I'm a gay man. No, perhaps when I knew him...
In all those years you saw nothing untoward, no whispers on the wind.
Perhaps when I was associating with him those years ago, as I did with my then partner and now husband, Ronaldo, we never, ever saw any evidence or sign of this activity, which has since come to light. That's why I feel so profoundly upset by what is now has been now revealed about what he did to women, and why I feel profoundly upset that I was taken in by him and continued my association with him for far longer than I should have.
But does that naivety on your part not make your current job as a very senior diplomat quite difficult if you're willing to accept that you were essentially conned?
I lived in London. I'm a Brit. He lived in New York. He was an American. Perhaps if I had been in closer proximity...
Well, you stayed with him on a number of occasions, as you admit.
I did in the early years. That's certainly true. And now I regret it. Now I regret it. I regret being taken in by him, as very many other people do. But it was 10 years later, when he was federally prosecuted, that people suddenly learned of what he had been up to for all those years.
I'm sorry, I just repeat, you are a disgusting man, and I think you are such a disgusting man for using the fact that you are gay, that you are a gay man, to try and justify the fact that you didn't see the paedophilia going on around you. You knew he was a paedophile, so the fact that you're gay makes absolutely no difference, and it is a sick defense. And of course, what we're going to see now is whether the mainstream regime media are prepared to turn on one of their own. As Helen Spirit posted, Emily Mateless, really looking forward to your forthcoming career-ending interview with Peter Mandelson regarding his exceptionally close relationship with Epstein. When can we expect it? Oh, wait. But at least Kemi Badenoch, who I've written off long ago, as you know, but she did come alive at PMQs today, and she had Slippery Starmer on the ropes over this. Check it out. He stood by Mandelson time and again. So in my view, he has to go next. Watch.
The Prime Minister cannot answer any questions. That is not the behaviour of someone who has full confidence. The ambassador should be in the White House talking about how we respond to an incursion into NATO airspace. Instead, he is giving interviews about himself to The Sun. This is a man who already had to be removed from cabinet twice, and now we learn that he was brokering billion-pound deals with Jeffrey Epstein while business secretary. I didn't get a proper answer. He's talking about process. This is not about process. This is about judgment. Just last week, I told him that he should sack his deputy prime minister. They all cheered and congratulated themselves. She was gone 2 days later. His face too is broken, and he's got a totally new front bench. So I will ask him again, will he make sure that these documents are published, and will he actually instruct Peter Mandelson to publish all his correspondence with Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, she says the ambassador's been in the White House discussing NATO. He is, as we all are, with a number of international calls this morning and on Ukraine, as well as the attack in Doha yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I see she's finally catching up with the questions that she should have asked last week about the Deputy Prime Minister. In the meantime, Mr. Speaker...
Oh, yeah. It's all just a laugh, isn't it? To my superstar panel, Charlie Downs of Restore Britain and Father Calvin Robinson. Father Calvin, Mandelson knew that Epstein was a convicted paedophile. He gave him career advice. He thought that it could be an opportunity for him to reinvent himself. Slippery Starmer then gave him the most senior job of representing our United Kingdom in Washington, D.C. And people say Candace Owens is a conspiracy theorist for believing a network of paedophiles runs the world.
If one of my friends was convicted of paedophilia, I wouldn't be giving them career advice. I wouldn't be saying fight back stronger. I'll be saying repent. You're going to go to hell. You have time to repent and apologize, show contrition, and seek absolution for your soul and for you need to seek justice for the people you have hurt. I would not be encouraging him. I find it despicable that he is. But what was interesting about what Lord Mandelson said was this would not happen in Britain. And he is right, isn't it? A convicted paedophile would not be sent down in Britain, unfortunately, because we cover it up. Most of our establishment has been involved to some degree in the covering up of the Pakistani Muslim rape gangs, and it continues. And there's rumours of child exploitation and child sexual abuse within the establishment, and it's a grave, grave sin and a grave shame, something that needs addressing. But whilst the people in power are benefiting from it, they're not going to address it. But what I can't put together is this whole Epstein thing a massive honeypot? Is it bigger than our governments? When we can see the evidence of Lord Mandelson maintaining that relationship on a very amicable level, is it because he knew that Epstein was an asset for shared governments, of which we can only speculate which ones? Is there something a part of a larger scheme here? Because when you look at the people like Speaker Mike Johnson, Vice President J.D. Vance, President Donald Trump, who were all saying, we'll release the files, the Epstein files, we'll release the files. And now they're in office and they're saying, well, it's a hoax. At the same time as AG Pam Bondi is saying, the files are on my desk, I'll release them soon. Oh no, there are no files. That something is going on around this Epstein case. It's bigger than just him being a nasty pedophile. It seems like he was part of some great honeypot scheme to entrap celebrities and politicians and people with high profiles in their debauched lifestyles. I'd like to know which governments are responsible. I'd like the files to be released, and I'd like to see full justice for all of the victims and survivors.
Absolutely. That is why we need those files released. I couldn't agree more with all of that. But Charlie Downs, there's a very basic point here, which is that we have a Prince of England, the late Queen Elizabeth II's favourite son, who lost everything because of his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Everything. Now, a lot of people will think that's right. For me personally, I think Andrew has become the easy person to blame when it comes to Epstein, because who wants to look at Bill Clinton? Certainly not the Democrats in America. Who wants to look at Bill Gates? Certainly not the Democrats in America. So let's pin this all on a British prince. I've always felt like it was very, very easy to blame all of this on Prince Andrew. But compare Prince Andrew's links to Epstein with Peter Mandelson, and it doesn't even come close. Andrew was an absolute fool. Of course he was. But Mandelson was actually advising this guy. So how on earth do we live in a world where Prince Andrew is cancelled forever because of his links, yet Peter Mandelson is promoted to one of the most powerful jobs in Britain or in the British government as the US ambassador?
Oh gosh, Dan, there's so much I want to say about this story. To first address the Prince Andrew point, I think that's a really interesting take. I think when you get to this level of politics and business, you know, the very, very highest, most elite levels of international kind of finance, which is obviously what Epstein was nominally involved in, and indeed government and so on. It's actually not unreasonable to think in a conspiratorial way. Because we're dealing here with people who are strategically minded, who do conspire and who do execute strategies in a very, very, incisive way. And I think it's entirely possible, perhaps, that some people got together and decided that Prince Andrew was going to be the scapegoat. He was going to be the face of the Epstein scandal in the absence of Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein himself, who are both, nowhere to be seen, which is quite strange. But on the Mandelson point, I mean, there's three things I want to say here. The first is that, Mandelson is a notoriously Machiavellian, intelligent political operator, probably one of the most effective politicians that this country has seen in the last 50 years. And we're expected to believe that he was just taken in, that he was just, bought into the probably fairly thinly veiled lies that a character like Epstein was maybe telling him, which is, hey, it's entirely possible that there weren't any lies, and that actually, the people who were in Epstein's immediate social circle were quite aware of what he was up to. I mean, Mandelson described Epstein as his best pal in a letter to him for his 50th birthday, right? And we're expected to believe that Mandelson just had no knowledge of this stuff that was going on. Now, I don't buy that for 1 second. The second point, Mandelson using the fact that he was gay, or is gay rather, to kind of get off the hook. Look, I don't know if there's any evidence for this, and I'm just going off of gut instinct. But once again, are we expected to believe that Epstein didn't compromise homosexual individuals with the sort of blackmail pedophile ring that he was running? Like, are we expected to believe that he didn't procure underage boys as well as underage girls in order to compromise the people that he sought to control, or indeed that those his masters sought to control? I mean, I believe Epstein's definitely an intelligence asset, for which government I won't say. And then the third point, and I think this is really crucial, once again, not to sound conspiratorial, but I can't help but wonder, as you just said, Father Calvin, about the fact that the Trump administration has the Epstein materials. They have a huge, presumably database of materials that were seized from Epstein, including presumably footage of high-power politicians, businessmen, celebrities engaging in depraved illegal activities on Epstein's island, on his jet, elsewhere, and so on. And I can't help but wonder whether the reason that they haven't kind of gone public with the Epstein stuff, and they have tried to bury it by saying that it's a hoax, is actually that the United States intelligence community has seen what they've got. They've seen what the materials that they've got, and they thought, actually, maybe we could get in on this, and maybe we could actually use these materials in the same way that Epstein used them, which is to blackmail people, which then leads you on to the question of why Mandelson, of all people, was chosen to be US ambassador. I'm not saying anything in particular there. I'm just putting the thought out there, Dan.
Absolutely fascinating stuff. A quick reminder of the breaking news, and we've got this footage to show you. Prince Harry has now arrived at Clarence House. That is him driving in for his first face-to-face meeting with King Charles. We have Angela Levin standing by, and she will be with us on this story. All of the latest details very, very shortly, so do stand by for that. Breaking right now, an MSM attempt to get Thomas Skinner booted off Strictly Come Dancing because he happens to be right-wing. Now, I knew this was going to happen. I warned of it, and Thomas Skinner has to hold firm. But here's what happened last night. It was the Strictly Come Dancing press conference, and all of the papers went huge on the fact that Thomas Skinner had apparently stormed out with bosses holding crisis talks about whether he was allowed a role in the show. A source told one of these newspapers this is exactly what Strictly did not need. With all the recent controversy, bosses wanted the series to be smooth sailing, but Thomas is already causing havoc. It's unprecedented for a celebrity to walk out of the show's media launch day, and bosses think it's really bad form. If this is a sign of things to come, Strictly have a big problem. Well, listen to what happened at the press conference with Tom Skinner first, then I'll give you his reaction.
This amazing opportunity. They're trying to... taping it. We have to record. What are you doing? Just answer the questions. We've got 3 minutes. No. That's about me. What made you? What's the question? I'm just recording it.
Yeah?
That's it.
Oh, well, he's gone.
Well, despite a hysterical 12 hours in which every newspaper tried to get Thomas Skinner booted off the show, he has stood firm. I'm proud of him for that, posting on X to set the record straight off the back of yesterday. During one of the interviews, a journalist placed their phone on the table to record the conversation. I happened to catch a glimpse of the screen and saw numerous messages, not about Strictly, but about a personal story from my past. I've been through some difficult times in my life, which I've worked hard to move on from. in that moment, seeing it there caught me off guard. I felt it was best to step away and gather myself. This had nothing to do with the interviews or Strictly itself. I'm sorry. I picked up someone else's phone, and I don't even know if the journalists realised their messages were visible, and I don't want to suggest any bad intentions on their part. What I do want to say is how excited I am to be part of Strictly this year. I'm so grateful for all the love, kindness, and support I've been shown so far. It means the world to me, and I can't wait to give it all on that dance floor, bosh. But I just want to give you an example of just how much the media, the mainstream media, are trying to finish off this guy. And I promise you, it is because he has right-wing views. Look at this from the Daily Mirror. A revolting headpiece. Tom Skinner is already making a fool out of BBC bosses. What was Strictly thinking? And this is a woman called Zoe Delaney, a journalist from Liverpool. She describes herself as an apologist for Gwyneth Paltrow. She's clearly on the hard left. She writes, when I first saw Tom Skinner's Strictly Come Dancing promo picture on my Twitter feed, I initially assumed it had come via a parody post. It seemed that ludicrous. You live a very sheltered life, love. Before Strictly has even taken over Saturday night viewing, Tom has already made the BBC look stupid, thanks to storming out of an interview and snatching a reporter's phone just hours on from the BBC Director General Tim Davie defending the decision to cast him in the upcoming series of Strictly. Utter rubbish. He has made a fool of no one. And can you believe Narinder Kaur's ludicrous moan that she was cut from Strictly Come Dancing because she's too controversial, yet they hired Tom Skinner, actually made its way to Parliament yesterday when the Director General, Tim Davie, was quizzed about why horrible Thomas Skinner is allowed on when lovely lefty Narinder Kaur, who seems to want all white people to burn, was banned. Watch. We'll get that in just 1 second, but first to my superstar panel, Charlie Downs and Father Calvin Robinson. So Father Calvin, it was completely obvious, wasn't it, that they were always going to come for Tom Skinner. He's not even really that right-wing. You know, he's a common sense guy who doesn't believe in mass immigration. But my God, after his meeting with J.D. Vance, it was so obvious they wanted him gone. Oh, sorry, Father Calvin, we'll just get your audio back. Do we have... Yes,
he's just an ordinary working class Englishman. I don't think he's particularly right wing. He's just an ordinary bloke. And actually his response there was very charitable, very generous, you know, to say, I don't know if the reporter had bad intentions, but I saw this and I didn't want any part of it. Good for him. But of course the reporter had bad intentions. Of course they're digging up any dirt they can find on his past because they don't want ordinary working class Brits represented on the BBC. They want the people, the horrible extremists like Narinder Kaur to be painted as normal people. There's nothing normal about Narinder. There's nothing normal about this anti-white racist extremism that they're plastering left, right, and centre. And to see the way he's been treated, he's not, he's not a media personality. He's not from this kind of background of commentating and being political. Yet he takes it. He takes all the flack and he just shrugs it off. And well played to him for doing that, because it takes a lot to have thick skin in this game. And of course, he didn't sign up to be a representative of right-wing England or anything like that. He just wants to protect his family, protect his country, and have a pint. What's wrong with that, for goodness sake?
100%. The fact that he is described as some type of extremist is ridiculous. His good friend Adam Brooks has been standing up for him, though, and he wrote, imagine trying to destroy a man that spreads a strong work ethic, spreads uplifting motivational speeches, promotes strong family values, and encourages people to do their best. Imagine being that much of a C-word in the media world or online that you want to destroy that man. And Charlie Downs, that really struck me because they actually do want to destroy him. And I think Adam Brooks is right when he says this is a ploy to get him sacked because they are scared of people like Thomas Skinner. I mean, when you've got the vice president of the USA inviting you over for a barbecue in the Cotswolds when he won't even bother to meet Kemi Badenoch, maybe there's reason to be scared. You know, you speak about the right looking for a leader. Is Tom Skinner the leader that we don't know is there already? But the point is, it does feel like this is a plot to destroy this guy.
Yeah, it's very interesting, the maneuverings that are happening around Tom Skinner. I actually met him earlier this year. I had the great privilege of meeting him and having a pint with him earlier this year at a conference in London where he gave a speech, which revealed that, yeah, he certainly isn't like some kind of hard right kind of guy. Like he's a very moderate, fairly centrist English guy, working class English guy. You know, he spoke about the fact that, you know, England welcomes all peoples and that kind of thing. Actually, fairly middle of the road stuff. But I think what the establishment maybe fears about him, or certain parts of the establishment fear about him, is the fact that he is a white English guy, he is a working class guy, and he does have that kind of X factor. He does have that kind of star power, similar to Farage in a way, actually, that you can imagine, you know, being in effect, the mascot of a political movement. And that sounds so condescending, right? But he does make a good figurehead, right? He's very charismatic, he's very funny, he's a good looking guy, family man and all the rest of it. And it's certainly the case that there are people out there who want to maneuver him into a position of political authority, which is, I think, part of the reason that he met JD Vance and the reason that meeting was set up in the way that it was. And I think that him going on Strictly Come Dancing is not some coincidental thing. I mean, you remember when Farage went on I'm a Celebrity, it really kind of ingratiated him with the general public and raised his profile substantially. I wonder whether we're seeing the same thing with him going on Strictly. And I mean, this whole story about the journalist and all the rest of it, that's kind of neither here nor there, really. I mean, I can imagine, if I sat down opposite from a journalist and saw on their screen that they'd prepared something that was something from my past that was, possibly painful or embarrassing, I'd be pretty annoyed.
He doesn't have to speak to them. He doesn't have to speak to them. They want to destroy him. Why the hell should he speak to them? I mean, I honestly have no problem with it. But look, absolutely fascinating stuff. What a brilliant superstar panel. Thank you so much to Charlie Downs, who is now the Director of Campaigns and a spokesman for Restore Britain, and the irrepressible Father Calvin Robinson. Thank you so much. And Father, I think...
Send my love to Angela Levin.
Yes, she's standing by. She is standing by. So we absolutely will. Father Calvin, thank you so much. I think we're speaking Monday. Breaking right now. King Charles chooses Prince Harry over the heir to the throne, Prince William. The meeting that no one wanted to take place is happening as we come on air tonight, with Prince Harry entering Clarence House just moments after the King flew in from Scotland. Here is Harry's car entering Clarence House. This was a meeting, of course, that has been long suggested by Harry's side, but long opposed by Prince William, who believes that Harry should remain in exile, who thinks that no member of the royal family should give this guy the credibility that he's still in royal circles, and of course should give him the opportunity to continue to leak stories. The meeting is not expected to last for long. Charles has travelled down to London for his cancer treatment in Harley Street anyway, which was meant to take place on Monday, but because it was a session day, it was actually delayed until today, and Harry has a commitment in the City of London. However, what we do know is that this will give the duplicitous Duke, who even this week is continuing his vile campaign against his brother Prince William, a spring in his step, as he can return to the United States and say, I am still in the royal fold. Angela Levin is Prince Harry's biographer. She is also our royal mastermind. Angela, you strongly advised the king to avoid this meeting. You said Harry was dangerous. He's ignored you, he's ignored Prince William, and he has granted him this face-to-face. You think it's a big mistake tonight, Angela?
I do indeed. I mean, he doesn't necessarily have to listen to me. He's the king after all. But I think it's absolutely appalling that Harry has managed to maneuver this I think it's disgusting on his side. And yesterday it was appalling because he was a big shot and he was a big man and he was so good, giving money here and money there. In the meantime, he wants to take the money from his father. I think it's terrible because I don't know how well he is. I don't know if the Queen Camilla is there. I'm pleased that they're in Clarence House. He did, of all things, want to go to a place that was far away from anything royal so that he could talk on his own. And for me, I understand that he wants to be able to shout at him. He won't have anybody to help him and it can go mad. And the king will be very upset. He'll have had his treatment today. And I can't think of anything that is more thoughtless. But in Clarence House, there will be people there. I don't know who, but that's a good thing. But on the other hand, you can't trust him at all. Will Meghan demand that she knows what's gone on? I can't imagine that she just sits back and is so sweet and won't say a word. So that's a huge worry. You can't trust him at all. The getting together again is impossible if they just talk for half an hour. They need weeks. And these very quick conversations don't mean anything and they don't stand up for anything. I think Harry has caused enormous harm to his father and his stepmother and his brother and his stepsister. And I think that it is appalling that he should be able to swung around today. I think it's just awful. I mean, if he's in there, I would hope that he would apologise, but I doubt it very much because he wants his father to apologise. He wants him to apologise to Meghan hugely, and he wants him to apologise to himself. Why? I don't know. The thing is, he should do is apologise to everything that he's done so badly in his book, in his behaviour, talking on the BBC recently, being very rude. And I think that he's not going to get it either. And I think that he will leak something, and we don't want that.
He will not be able to help himself, Angela. I mean, already there is speculation, by the way, that he tipped off the paparazzi so that they would be outside Clarence House. And we can tell you, Angela, that since we've come on air, one of Prince Harry's propagandists, this bloke Chris Shipp, who is the royal editor for ITV News, but has been, I'm going to show you in a little bit, actually, this crazy propaganda campaign he's been running for Prince Harry over the past 24 hours, Angela. But he has confirmed that Prince Harry has now left Clarence House, which means we can confirm for a fact, Angela, that the meeting went on for less than an hour. Chris Shipp has calculated, and this will have come from Harry's team, that he was inside Clarence House for 55 minutes, but he did suggest, Angela, of course, that he could have been waiting in a corridor for a long period of time. So it's hardly a very long meeting. It almost feels as if Charles has done this to throw Harry a bone rather than it being any proper chance at reconciliation, because it's just not a very long time to spend together given everything they've got to try and sort out.
Yes, I mean, sorting out the differences and what's gone wrong is going to be taking a very long time, and they've both got to be in the same moods. But I fear that he now feels, if he's gone there, and he has, that he feels he's got control now and he can judge his father and he can be ruder than he wanted to. I mean, he's manipulative and he could do anything he wanted now. He's got to see his father. He's won. And I can't bear the thought of either of him or his wife ever sort of winning because they've been so cruel, so awful. I just feel it very powerful. I'm very sorry that this has happened. You can't talk to somebody who you haven't seen for 17 months, 19 months, isn't it? 19 months, and be friends. You can't, because you're not the same in that time, especially as the king has been so ill. Does he say, I'm better now? I don't suppose he will. Does he say, I'm in a bad state and I don't want you to upset me anymore? Of course not. I mean, I can't see how you could say, and Harry said, sorry about this, sorry about that. I mean, it's a nonsense, isn't it? I just think it's a shame. And as for William and Catherine, I think that you can't harm them like that. They've suffered a lot and they've stood by it, and they've been tremendously sane about the whole thing. And I don't think that it's right to actually rock the boat, as it were, because we really need them. They're who we really need.
Well, I know, but Charles has made his decision.
Anymore.
We're also hearing, Angela, they had a private tea together. Would this be the usual time that Charles would take tea?
Yeah, he likes his tea. He doesn't have lunch, or he didn't until he was quite ill. Didn't have lunch, but he likes to have tea with a tiny little sandwich with, I think it's about one mouthful, glonk. But yes, he does. The Queen loved tea, and I think he likes to have tea. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but he loves all sorts of teas. So, and honey, sometimes a bit of bread with honey. Yes, he does do that. So it's not sort of starting something that is really unusual. He will have a cup of tea. I don't know if Harry will have a cup of tea. I don't care. But I think to have upset our royal family that we respect and love so much, it's just very upsetting.
It really is, Angela. It really, really is. And there's a lot of anger as well, Angela, even coming from, usual supporters of the monarchy. Queer Lips of Truth writing, the goal is to tie Prince William's hands so he can't do anything or else he would be seen as mean. I'm sorry, reconcile as a parent, but lay down the law as Queen Marguerite of Denmark did. To be honest, I'm not pleased, angry even. And I guess, Angela, we can hope that Charles may have laid down the law in the meeting, but Harry doesn't seem to care.
He doesn't listen. It's like lots of these things where something terrible happens and they just carry on in their own way. I mean, he can't have a royal role. He absolutely mustn't. I think it's just not in the bag for that. And how are you going to stop him doing all these things? He's running around this week, I thought was shocking. He was trying to show what anything his brother could do, he could do better. It was just terrible. Saying he's going to give him £1 million, and he's actually said today he's giving 370,000 money for Gaza and Ukraine. Now, why is he trying to take masses of money from his father? 24/7 amount of money to protection for all four of them. Why is he saying that when he's sort of showing off how much money he's got? I don't believe that either, but that's not quite the point of this. It's just that he's someone you can't trust anymore. And if you
Angela, because he has come here this week. Now, number one, I do want to talk about these donations. We'll get to it because I don't trust them. I've got so many questions about them. Are they a tax write-off? Whose money is it? Is it your personal money? Did it come from Netflix and all of you slagging off the royal family? Is it Archewell money? I've got lots of questions about that. Why did you make this donation apparently in December, but you've only revealed the details now? But Angela, when it comes to that question, I think I could answer. Everything this week has been about trying to prove that he can overshadow Prince William in his own backyard. It is a total disgrace what this guy is doing, because he is totally ignoring the wishes of the late Queen Elizabeth II. So it's all well and good, Angela, for him to arrive in the country and toddle on off to St. George's Chapel and then leak to the media that he was paying tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II. What was her one dying wish, Angela, at the Sandringham Summit? That there was no half in, half out. You can't be a private citizen flaunting money and then come back and cosplay doing royal duties. So this is why Charles's weakness infuriates me, and why I believe William will be utterly furious, because he has lobbied his father for months on the idea that Harry needs to remain in exile. And even Harry's behaviour this week, Angela, which we'll come to, involved making digs at Prince William in front of sick children. You know, Harry is a child. He is not someone to be respected.
He said that, didn't he? He said, "Oh, I'm still a boy." And then you think, oh, gosh, you know, help us all. It's just terrible if he knows that he's still a boy. Grow up and actually understand other people's lives and how other people want to live. Because with him, it's always him, you know, what he feels. He wants this for Meghan. He wants this for himself. He doesn't care that his father's ill. We've seen that several times before, haven't we? That despite the fact that he's being ill, he says, well, I've only got 20 minutes, so I must go and see him. You know, you usually, if you want to see somebody who's not well, you say, when is it okay for me to see you? You know, when will you feel that you've got time and you've got the energy? You know, he's got none of that. He used to have it, I can assure you. It's very strange, because when I went around with him for 15 months, he was marvellous with people who were in trouble, any sort of trouble. And now it's absolutely gone. It's wiped out. And he just thinks about himself. That's it.
Well, Angela, you mentioned that little joke. Take a look at what happened at this Well Child event earlier in the week.
I said for many years that I still have a child inside of me.
Have you got brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I've got a younger brother.
Does he drive you mad, or does he not?
No, we get along fine.
But Angela, what he did there was try and get that very young, sick kid to play into his digs at Prince William. It was completely inappropriate. So that was Declan Bitmead, 17-year-old. And Harry asked of his brother, does he drive you mad? When Declan replied, no, we get on fine, Harry replied, you know what, siblings. When he told Harry that his brother went to the same school as him, Harry said, you're at the same school? That sometimes makes it more challenging. He was desperate to make a point about William, even, Angela, at an event with sick children. I mean, I just feel like none of that is regal or royal behavior. He made very inappropriate jokes on stage. It's just awful. We don't need this guy. We don't want him. Like, what is Charles thinking?
Yes, that's quite right. There's a boy who's obviously extremely unwell. He's not just got something that's going to be better next week. And he's only 17. To meet a prince, you know, he doesn't have to analyse him. It's going to be very difficult. How do you answer that? How do you have a conversation? It's not easy for anyone to do, to speak to someone from the royal family, whether they're in and out working. And Harry made it extremely difficult for him. He wanted to be positive, this teenager, and he wanted to perhaps be positive about his own health. But in comes Harry, smash, bang, and he might say, oh dear, I couldn't say what he wanted me to say. I'm so upset. That's how I think a young teenager would feel, that he didn't feel that he said the right things that the prince could have wanted. How awful is that? Absolutely terrible.
Angela, some new reporting coming in from Shooter Scoop, who has been very good on the royal news in regards to Harry and Meghan in recent months. So let's get straight to his insight on this meeting. He says Charles actually cleared his diary for Harry. The Duke of Sussex spotted driving into Clarence House at 5:20, of course. Palace insiders tell Shooter Scoop the hush-hush meeting was months in the making and carried hopes of thawing one of the bitterest father-son feuds in royal history. Harry's been desperate for time with his father, one insider confides. This was the moment. Now, Shooter Scoop, we don't have confirmation of this, by the way, Angela, but Shooter Scoop is confirming, I know you'll be pleased to hear this, that Queen Camilla was present. Harry, fresh from an event at Imperial College London Centre for Blast Injury Studies, carved out a rare gap before heading to his Invictus Games reception. It was a rare window of overlap in his 4-day solo trip of Britain. Until now, Harry had not seen Charles or William, who kept busy with separate engagements far away. The last meeting between father and son lasted barely 30 minutes. Since then, tension over Harry's memoir Spare, his Netflix deal, and a string of lawsuits has kept the royals divided. But William, as we know, Angela's still icy. Shooter Scoop says Prince William pointedly stayed away, fueling speculation that the rift between brothers remains as raw as ever. Nobody is pretending the wider family issues have been resolved, said one courtier. This is about beginning with Charles and Harry. So that's quite interesting too, to think about that. And for Harry, the reunion was more about protocol. But Shooter Scoop reports, bottom line, behind Clarence House's closed doors, a royal reunion finally unfolded. Whether it sparks forgiveness or fuels more silence is the question only time will answer. Angela, if it is indeed true that Queen Camilla was there, that feels quite significant.
Hugely significant. She's insisted on being in all the meetings, and he's tried his very best. He just to keep on saying, I don't want her here, get rid of her, she's not going to be here. But she's refused to go. Very nicely, very politely, but she's going to stay in there so she can look after her husband and make sure that it doesn't go too far. I feel quite a bit better for that, because she knows him inside out and outside in, and she is the only one he really listens to. So it also means it's good that the king has agreed to her being there, that Harry changed his mind because he said he didn't want her there, so he had to do that or nothing at all. And I think that makes it a bit better. I'll tell you one thing that I shouldn't really, that I find very upsetting, but I think it's a time where you can say that, and that he is desperately trying to get all the money and all the apologies for Meghan and all that for his father while he's still alive, because he knows absolutely that William won't give him any of these things when he takes the throne. Now, we don't know whether the king can have 10 years, one of this kind of cancer, which I know of people who've got the same thing. As long as you go for checks and you have whatever you need to have, you can live a normal-ish life for quite a long time and many years. And I hope that happens to him. But I just wonder, because he and Meghan are so spiteful and nasty, and everything is worked out very, very carefully, and that they could say, look, we've just got to get that sorted before anything happens. And every time I think of that, which is a lot, it just makes my heart burn.
We've got some reporting just in on this, Angela, from Tom Sykes of the Royalist Substack, who writes that this face-to-face meeting is going to stir up trouble with Prince William. He's also shocked. He says this is a meeting that almost nobody thought would actually happen. And yet it has, of course, happened. He reports William has made it abundantly clear that he doesn't want to see Harry, doesn't want to hear from Harry, and doesn't want anyone else in the family to engage with him either. For Charles to ignore that stance and to do it so publicly is a major surprise. It also reveals an emerging split at the heart of the palace. He writes, there is a more conciliatory faction forming in Charles's household, spearheaded by Sir Theo Rycroft, the incoming Deputy Private Secretary, a former diplomat in Paris, who insiders say provides a counterweight to the hawkish Clive Alderton, aka the Wasp, whose relationship with Harry is one of mutual loathing. Rycroft's arrival is seen as softening the king's tone and perhaps tilting him towards outreach rather than ostracism. A friend of the king's has told the royalist that Charles would have been delighted by the encounter, and that such a meeting suggested Harry may already have apologised or was preparing to for his brutal attacks on Camilla in Spare and elsewhere, where he branded her a wicked stepmother who would leave bodies in the street to become queen. Harry will be equally delighted, having spent months publicly signalling his wish to reconcile before his father times runs out. Just this summer, he told the BBC that he wanted peace with Charles, explicitly referencing the King's cancer diagnosis. But if Charles will be pleased, William will not. For him, Harry's betrayal of trust, and particularly the allegation that Kate asked bigoted questions about children's skin colour, is a permanent and irreversible sin. He sees reconciliation with his brother in much the same light as he sees the rehabilitation of Prince Andrew. A very bad idea. He was a critic of the King's decision to allow Andrew back into the fold and believes he was vindicated by Andrew Lanning's recent expose of Andrew. He holds the same hard line towards Harry. Once you're out, you're out. This sets up, this is according to Tom Sykes, an extraordinary new dynamic inside the monarchy. The King willing to forgive, his heir unwilling to forgive, and that clash, more than the meeting itself, could be the beginning of the next great royal conflict. So fascinating insight there, Angela, and I certainly hope that King Charles's team actually are prepared to brief if Prince Harry apologised. But I mean, I think there's more chance of that than hell freezing over, don't you? Given your reporting is that Harry is still demanding an apology towards Meghan Markle.
Yeah, and he wants to call it HRH when, so that means everybody will curtsy or bow. That's also on his list. But actually, with Camilla, she won't expect Harry to apologise. She doesn't actually draw those things in and not sleep at night. She can handle that sort of thing. She's remarkable about that. We saw that and heard that when she started living with Charles, not so long after Diana died. But she can hold it, and she doesn't want to make a stir for that. So I think King Charles won't actually worry too much about her because she can handle herself and indeed him very well. But I think that with his brother, the heir to the throne, is shocking, and he has been so talked about in such a bad way by his brother, who he looked after all the time for years. He looked after him for a very long time because he loved him and he wanted to care for him right till he was 23. And he then said to me, you really must go and see someone and get your mental problems sorted out. And, he just really looked after him. But the things that he said, that Harry has said about Catherine, I think have caught him in a terrible way because for himself, he's strong and he can fight these things and he can smash him up in a fight. But actually, for his adored wife, who's done so much good for the royal family and worked so hard, he won't have those terrible things that he's said to her. I mean, right at the beginning, he said she was the sister he'd always wanted. But since then, he's said horrible things. And I don't want to say it now, but I will if you want me to. But, that's absolutely shocking. He won't ever forgive him. He's very determined indeed. And why should he? He's not going to have any contact with him. And that's much easier than trying to get a little bit out of someone. And then you start having a huge row again and everything is blown apart.
Indeed, Angela, it really is. And goodness me, this is obviously going to run and run. But I'm happy
here. I will.
Yeah, but I personally,
carry on.
I just think Charles has just made a real mistake here. I really do. Angela, of course, this has also overshadowed some real royal news today, but let me just show you these details. They've also just broken. This is the reporting from Roy Anika, the royal editor of the Sunday Times, who reports that the Princess of Wales, that's Catherine, of course, and Melania Trump, the First Lady of the US, will do a joint engagement together during next week's US state visit at Frogmore Cottage. It's with members of the Scouts Squirrel program to hear more about young people engaging with nature and the outdoors. It has been revealed that the President and the First Lady will stay with the King and Queen at Windsor Castle for one evening, which will feature the state banquet. During their stay, they will privately visit Queen Elizabeth's tomb at St. George's Chapel to lay a wreath and also hear a choir perform. But sadly, Roy Anika reports it looks like there will be no public moment during the US state visit with a carriage procession for the president and the First Lady, only through the Windsor estate, not through the town, like previous visits. After Windsor, Donald Trump will head to Chequers to see Keir Starmer. Now, I've got a whole load of issues with the fact that this is a watered-down state visit, Angela. I'm not happy about it. I would like to see Trump and Melania paraded through the streets of London and Windsor. I think they absolutely deserve that level of respect. However, it's interesting to note, isn't it, that even though Harry has stolen the spotlight today, come next week, it's Catherine and William who will be centre stage alongside Charles and Camilla at this state visit. And what do you make about this quite special engagement as part of the programme between Catherine and the First Lady? I mean, Angela, you know I'm not really a fashion guy, but my God, everyone is going to be looking at what they're wearing.
Yes, well, it'll be wonderful. It'll be fascinating. But they both love nature. We know that Catherine, particularly since she had cancer, it's made her feel better. So the two of them are getting together and dealing with earth and plants and talking to people very nicely. I think they'll get on very well. She's done remarkably well, actually. More and more people like her. And for the first time, she's now on the front of magazines, which they didn't want to do before because they thought she was phony. But she's not phony. She cares a lot. She does a lot about children in difficulties and all that. So I think that will be very nice. And to see two beautiful women who have got an awful lot to stand for and to deal with, I think will be fascinating. I just wonder if they weren't going to go through the roads that they thought maybe it's too dangerous. You know, a lot of people are now after killing him. And I just wonder whether they think that perhaps it is much too dangerous and they shouldn't go that far where they can't protect them.
Definitely a security threat, no doubt about that. But I also think there's a political issue going on here, Angela. And the political issue is that Starmer is so terrified of his own party at the moment that he's nervous about putting Trump centre stage. But actually, Angela, he should be much more nervous about the fact that he's got an American ambassador in Peter Mandelson, who was best mates with Jeffrey Epstein, who was helping Jeffrey Epstein through his rehabilitation post his conviction for paedophilia. And I'm sorry, Angela, it feels pretty unfair at the moment that Prince Andrew sits completely cancelled in Windsor Castle, unable to leave, unable to conduct any formal business, when this despicable man, Mandelson, who had far, far closer links to Epstein than Andrew ever did, is given that plum roll in Washington, D.C. I just feel the hypocrisy around that is off the scale.
I didn't like to see him in his dressing gown.
No,
like that,
revolting.
for sure.
Absolutely revolting.
I had quite a lot of work to do with him a while ago, but he's so patronising and he's so sort of, I don't know, nasty really underneath. And I think it's terrible. They can't let him get away with it. I heard the Prime Minister saying today, well, you know, it's just made another mistake. I know there's always another mistake, but he's still marvellous and I hope that it goes on. Well, you just see him so weak and pathetic. And it won't do him any good by saying that. He's just dead scared that the people are going to come and get him. The whole of the Labour Party are, you know, fighting against each other now. So it looks very, very difficult. And he doesn't want to make it worse by keeping McDonald up there.
No, indeed, Angela. Thank you so much. Our royal mastermind, Prince Harry's biographer, with all the big breaking news on the royal family today, Angela.
Thank you for asking me
so much. And look, at this super chat from Alex Marmon makes a really good point. The fact that Starmer chose Mandelson despite his close links to Epstein shows what an awful judge of character he is. Both should resign in disgrace. And indeed, Elaine Fielding says, my grandparents and great-grandparents fought for this country. I have no choice but to stand for our country in their name. Robin Hollingbrugh says, Dan, British people are scared of speaking out, of calling Starmer and the establishment out for fear of being slammed in jail. But make no mistake, the signs are there. The blue touch paper is lit. What a day. What a day of the most astonishing breaking news. I've loved sharing it with you. But now we've got to reveal today's greatest Briton and Union Jackass. A reminder of your Union Jackass nominees. Peter Mandelson, nominated by Sarah Booth, who says Lord Mandel slime for slithering his way into another big scandal. Jeremy Corbyn, nominated by It's Only Me 44 for standing on the picket line with tube drivers. And Emily Thornberry, nominated by Darren Donaldson, Baroness Bunter, for announcing her interest, obsession to be the new deputy leader of Labour and not allowing comments on her post. Okay, to the results. In third position with 16% of the vote, Emily Thornberry. The runner-up with 27% of the vote, Jeremy Corbyn. But today's Union Jackass, Peter Mandelson, with 57% of the vote. He must go. But so too must slippery Starmer. And I feel like we're getting closer and closer to that by the day. Today's greatest Briton. I loved this. The Black Belt Barrister, nominated by Mad Dog Photo for appearing on this show on Monday. And it was such a great episode. I had such amazing feedback. So if you missed it, please do go and check it out. Now, we're moving over to Substack now for the uncancelled after show, where we're going to look into P. Diner much more on Prince Harry's £1.1 million charity donation. All is not what it seems. Likewise, it's really not all it seems with Meghan Markle's attempt to finally back her husband. So we'll get into all of that with P. Diner over on Substack right now, www.outspoken.live. But I am back live with you tomorrow, 5 p.m. UK time, midday Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hit subscribe right now on YouTube and Rumble. And most importantly, I promise